Okay, so in this session, we are going to discuss most interesting and most important concept of your web programming subject called as CSS. So CSS, what exactly a CSS is? First, we'll see the full form of CSS. The CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Mainly, CSS is used to make your web page more attractive. Okay, so with the help of CSS, you can apply various properties or various styles on your HTML element. Okay, so we'll learn about this concept one by one. CSS is a collection of rules that can be applied to various HTML tags. So collection of rules. Rules are nothing but kind of your properties. So we will apply various properties on HTML tags. Okay. CSS provides very easy and effective way to specify various attributes for the HTML tag. So these properties are very easy to use and they are very effective. Now, you can specify a number of style properties for a given HTML element. We can specify various properties for a particular HTML element. When I say HTML element is nothing but your HTML tag. It can be either heading tag like H1 tag, H2 tag, or it can be a paragraph tag. So we can apply various properties to your HTML elements. So let us discuss about these properties, or let us discuss about the syntax first, like how to apply these properties to a HTML tag. So I have one Word file. Here I have mentioned the syntax for using CSS. Okay, so as you can see, the syntax is mentioned over here. The syntax contains two to four things like selector. It contains selector, then it has a property has a value, and the whole thing is known as declaration block. Is not it is not blog, by the way, it is block. Now, what exactly a selector is? Selector indicates HTML element you want to style. So if I want to apply a style, if I want to apply properties on, say, suppose paragraph tag, then in that case, paragraph is my selector. If I want to apply a properties on H1 tag, then H1 is my selector. So selector is nothing but your HTML element that you want to type. Okay. So by the way, there are various types of selector that I'm not going to discuss in this video. I'll make a separate session for it. So this is all about your selector. Selector is nothing but the element that you want to style, and it could be any tag. Like it can be a H1 tag, it can be H2, H3, paragraph, order list tag, OL tag, UL tag, anything. Now, the properties are declared inside a declaration block. Okay, so declaration block is always started with curly bracket and it is ended with curly bracket. Okay, so now the declaration block can contain more than one properties. Okay, and the properties are defined in this manner. Here the property name colon property value. So in this way, you define a properties like this is your property name and this is your value for this particular property. So we can apply various properties on a single element. Okay. So in order to do so, we basically see we separate the properties by semicolon. So you should remember we can apply various properties on your HTML tag, and these properties are separated by semicolon. As you can see, I'm applying these two properties and on H1 tag, and properties are separated by semicolon. So we can apply various properties on a particular selector. Now, property is nothing but the style that you want to apply on a selector. So there are various types of property. I have a separate table for that. What are the different types of properties that we can apply on a selector? So now we'll see. By the way, every property has value, and the property is defined like this. It is defined like this, like property name colon value. Now we'll see different types of properties that are that we can use or that we can apply on selector. So these are the property names. Okay, so very first property is background. this particular property will set a background color for a text. Like if I want to give a background color for only one paragraph, then I will use background property over here. Now there are various properties like color, font family, font size. If I want to change the style of your font, then you can use font family property. If you want to change the size, then you can apply font size then you can apply font size property. So there are various properties. You can also provide alignment using text hyphen align property. So these are nothing but my property name. Now let us discuss about most important question, like different types of CSS. Okay, so CSS has basically three types, and these are nothing but my internal CSS, inline CSS, and third one is external CSS. Now, there is always confusion between inline and internal CSS. So there are certain points that we should consider or that we should keep in your mind. The first is we'll discuss about internal CSS. So by the way, these are nothing but my types of CSS that will apply certain properties on your HTML element. Okay, but the way of writing these particular things are different. Okay, so first we'll see internal CSS. So if you want to apply a style, if you want to apply various properties on an HTML tags, then what you can do, you have three options. Either you will use internal CSS, you can use inline CSS, or you can use external CSS. Okay, so we'll first see internal CSS. So whenever you are using internal CSS, there is one tag you need to consider, like you have to specify your properties inside a style tag. Okay, so whatever the properties you are applying, just mention those property inside style tag. That's the only difference. As you can see, the style information, or you can see the properties, are always defined in a document head using which tag? Style tag. So in internal CSS, you will use style tag, and inside a style tag will write various properties. So by the way, the style tag should be defined inside a head tag. So this is most important, like you will write your style tag inside a head tag. Now, basic syntax, as you can see, I'm not mentioning HTML opening tags for HTML and all those things. What I'm doing here, as you can see, the head is open first, then I'm using style tag. So by looking at this, I can clearly say that this program will follow internal CSS. Okay. So as you can see, there is one attribute of style tag called as type. Okay. This is a compulsory attribute. You have to use this attribute. This particular attribute will tell your browser the type of style you are applying. So in this case, I'm using CSS, right? So I will write type is equal to text slash CSS. So this is in this way you will write, you what you are doing is you are assigning, or you are assigning a type to a particular style. Now what I'm doing here is just to mention the element name and the property colon its value. The properties are always separated by semicolon. So here I'm assigning two properties, and these properties are separated by semicolon. Now I'm closing the style tag, and then I will close head tag. So we'll discuss one example on internal CSS first. As you can see, okay, now this is the best example for internal CSS. Here I'm applying some properties on two tags, paragraph tag and h1 tag. Okay, so I'm applying my properties on paragraph tag and h1 tag. So and I'm using internal CSS, right? So if you want to use internal CSS, then create a style tag, or you can say just mention your property inside a style tag, and style tag are always defined inside a head tag. So as you can see, the style tag is used over here, and this tag is mentioned inside a head opening and closing tag. Okay, so in style opening and closing, I'm applying, I can write various properties. So I'm writing properties for two tags, P and H1. So as you can see, this is known as selectors. Okay, so so I will apply these properties on paragraph tag, and I will apply this particular property on H1 tag. So as you can see, I'm applying two properties on paragraph tag called as color and then font size 20 pixel. So by applying or by writing this particular statement, what I'm doing is I'm simply telling my browser that this paragraph, the paragraph should be of 20 size. The font size for that particular paragraph should be 20, and the text color of that particular paragraph should be red. So color is basically used to change the color of your text. Okay, so if I write red over here, that means this whole paragraph will now display your text in red color, and the size of text is what, 20 pixels. So in this way you are applying a properties. Now H1, I'm applying a background color to H1. So background color, green background color will get displayed at the background of your H1 tag. Okay, so in this way you are defining some properties. Now these properties are applied to this tag. If I write H2 over here, if I write H2 over here, then this property, or if I write something, then this particular thing will display as it is, like it will behave like normally. Okay, but these properties are not applied to H2 tag. Why? Because I am applying it only to H1 and paragraph tag. So in this way you can define your internal CSS. The one thing you should know about internal CSS is that just you just use it style tag, that's it. Okay, now we'll move ahead and we'll see second type of CSS called as inline CSS. Okay, so in inline CSS, what we do is we apply our properties, or we define your properties along with the HTML tag. Okay, using style attribute. So in internal CSS you will use style tag, but in inline CSS you will apply your properties along with your HTML tags. Okay, using which attribute? Style attribute. So in inline CSS, style is an attribute, whereas in internal CSS, style is a tag. So as you can see, I'm applying a style to a paragraph tag by using style attribute. Okay, and in double quotes, I have to specify the various properties. Okay, so in this way, you can define your styles for inline CSS. Okay, there is one example on inline CSS. As you can see, there is opening bracket on HTML, then head, then body open. Now, as you can see, I'm applying a style tag. I'm applying this particular properties on which tag style, on which tag field tag. So this property in inline CSS, you can apply your property using style attribute. Okay, so this is nothing but your inline CSS. Now we'll move further and we'll see most important type of CSS called as external CSS. So what exactly external CSS is? So in external CSS, what you will do is will simply write your properties in a separate file, and will save that file with CSS with .css extension. Like we'll read this particular slide. If you need to use your style sheet to various pages, then it is always recommended to define a common style sheet in a separate file. Like if I want to apply certain properties for 2 to 4 web page, then I will not mention same properties for 2 to 4 pages. What I will do, the best way is I will save those property inside a one file, and then I will include that file in those 2 to 4 web pages. So in this way your external CSS works. So in external CSS we create a separate CSS file that contains various rules. Okay, as you can see, rules are nothing but, by the way, property. So we'll write your property in a separate file, and that file is known as CSS file. And the CSS file will always have an extension called as .css. That means we'll simply save that file with .css extension, and then we'll include this .css file to your web page using which tag? Link tag. So in external CSS you will use link tag. Now we'll see the steps for creating external CSS. So in external CSS, we need two files, okay, minimum two files, CSS file and HTML file. In CSS file, we'll write various properties. So as you can see, the step one is to create a CSS file and the required properties, add the required properties and save it with CSS. So here I'm saving this particular CSS file with myrules.css, and I'm writing two properties over here. Like one property is applied to a paragraph tag and second property is applied to h1 tag. So now we'll discuss the step number two, that is create a HTML file and add a link tag in its head section. So now the second step is to add this myrules.css to your main HTML file. And in order to do so, we have one tag called as link tag. Okay, so we'll discuss this here. The link tag, by the way, the link tag is again mentioned inside a head section. Okay, so your similarly your style tag is also defined inside a head section. So link tag has three attributes. As you can see, the first attribute is our rel, stand for relation. The second attribute is type, whose value is text class CSS, because we are applying CSS style over here. That's why the type will be text plus CSS. And the third is nothing but your href. Href is nothing but the reference to your CSS file. So your, as you can see, the CSS, the name of CSS file is what? myrules.css. So in this case, we will write myrules.css over here. So the name of the CSS file should be mentioned in this particular section, in href section. Okay, so by the way, the relation is nothing but your style sheet. That means this particular thing is of style sheet. So this is all about your link tag, which has three attributes, and these three are important and compulsory attributes for external CSS. And then what I'm doing is I'm simply closing the head tag, opening a body tag, and then I'm writing paragraph and h1. So in this case, if there are any properties on paragraph and h1 which is there in myrules.css, then it will directly apply those properties on paragraph and h1 tag. As you can see, in myrules.css we have mentioned properties on p and h1. So these properties, this particular property will apply to your P and H1 tag. So this particular thing will now displayed in 20 font size and the color of text is red. Similarly, this thing is now in displayed with background color as green. Okay, so in this way you can write your external CSS. So this is all about your types of CSS. For a summary purpose, like in internal CSS, we in internal CSS, what we will use, will simply use a style tag. Okay, and style tag is defined inside of head tag. In inline CSS, will not use any tag. What we'll do, will simply use style as an attribute. And in external CSS, we'll create two files, CSS file and HTML file, and we'll link your CSS file to your HTML file with the help of one tag called as link tag. And link tag has three compulsory attributes. One is your rel, which stands for relation. The second one is your type, which is nothing but text slash CSS. And the third one is nothing but your href, which is nothing but a reference to your .css file. So in this way, you can use your CSS. Now, if you have any question, then do mention in a comment section.